Welcome back to another episode of the Bright Brains Podcast. This is your host, Isaac, and today my guest is Jack Decker. He is a libertarian who is advocating for an amendment, a states' rights First Amendment. So, welcome to the show, Jack.
Well, I'm glad for happy here.
Uh, hey, thank you for being here. So, let's talk about yourself. Tell us a little bit about yourself and your background.
I'm a 40-year libertarian. I was that after I left the military. The military is a totalitarian organization, has to be. A lot of people do not, a lot of Americans don't know that soldiers, the Bill of Rights don't apply to soldiers. The uniform, in place of the Bill of Rights, there's Uniform Code of Military Justice. But rights that you just take for granted, freedom of speech, freedom of assembly, freedom of religion. Religion is kind of a privilege in the military. They will not stop to let you do a daily prayer. All these. So when I joined the military for two reasons. This is during the peak of the Cold War. This is the early 80s, and I wanted to defend this country, and I really wanted to defend our Bill of Rights. And it was kind of surprising when I got into the military and they informed us that the Bill of Rights don't apply to us, that the Uniform Code of Military Justice does. And I read of what that meant. Very few soldiers actually break out the book and read what the Uniform Code of Military Justice is, but it all makes sense. During the Iraq War, part one and part two, there's often you'd have these reports that would give the location of where they are, which means they're giving these embedded reports. They're giving the location where a military unit is, which is just inviting an attack. So it all makes sense. But when I left the military, I was honorably discharged. I just want to do one stint, and I just started exploring that more and more. And the more I read into it, the more I just became intrigued by. At that time, libertarianism was not really what it is today. The Libertarian Party was relatively new, but eventually, while living in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, I was at a bookstore, and I was having a problem finding a book, and the bookstore clerk said, "Well, are you a fan of Frank Lloyd Wright, the architect?" And so, "Oh, yeah, I am." Frank Lloyd Wright was from Wisconsin. And he said, "Oh, here's a book. It's called Fountainhead by Ayn Rand. And it's a fictionalized version of Frank Lloyd Wright's life." And I read it from cover to cover. I was fascinated by it. Without sleep. Ayn Rand wrote huge books. And again, got some sleep, went back to the store and sought out the same book clerk and said, "Wow, I really enjoyed this book." He said, "Oh, if you enjoy that one, here's Atlas Shrugged." And when I read the introduction, the preface for Atlas Shrugged, Ayn Rand said there were questions that were raised about her philosophy in Fountainhead, and that's what Atlas Shrugged was. It was just answering those questions in a fictional form, in a story form. I know some people don't like her. Some people don't like her literature, but you have to understand she was from Russia. If you know anything about Russian literature, there is no happy ending. Read War and Peace; it doesn't end well. Russians are very. I would hate to see what a Russian says is a really dark story, because their stories already are dark to begin with. And so I eventually found out about after that. I found out about libertarianism, and eventually I found my way to Libertarian Party. I became director of public relations and advertising for Libertarian Party of Dane County. I eventually ran for the 76th State Assembly District of Wisconsin. I got 20% of the vote, which might not seem a lot unless you understand what third parties normally get in the elections. That's pretty good for a third party. And it just developed from there. When I was in college, I was developing these thoughts. Fortunately, if this thing ever takes off, there's records of how my thoughts progressed, because I wrote letters to the editor, to the college paper, to the Wisconsin State Journal, to Milwaukee Journal. And these ideas have just been formulating over the years, 40 years. And I think I finally got a handle on it. I think I understand how to make the government better. And well, we're about to come into an election year. And I thought, well, this is political. And what a better time to come up with this. And so I solidized it and put it into form. It has evolved. There used to be a section one that predated, was the first section of all of it in the amendment, and that was basically saying that the federal government cannot do, regulate, or fund what the states can do, regulate, or can technically do, regulate, or fund themselves. That caused some problems with people concerned that it might replicate the problems that occurred with the Articles of Confederation. That was our first, if your audience is Americans, our first constitution wasn't the U.S. Constitution, it was Articles of Confederation. That's what our Revolutionary War we fought under. And there were problems with it. There were, the taxation at the federal level was totally voluntary. The states could give what they wanted and when they wanted. The federal government didn't have a military. The states had their militias. And you read the history about the problems that occurred over and over through the Civil War. Not Civil War, the Revolutionary War. And it was because of that. And then after the Revolutionary Wars was over, there was a rebellion called the Shaw Rebellion, SHAY, and it showed really more of the weaknesses of the Articles of Confederation. So the founding fathers, who are all still alive, this just happened. They met again. And they came up with the article, the U.S. Constitution, and it was with the understanding that they would reconvene again and come up with basically what we call today the Bill of Rights. They were really, okay, we'll sign off on this with the understanding that we're going to meet again and we're going to deal with these right issues. And so the Articles of Confederation had a different form of government. It was very parliamentary. It had one chamber. The president was almost a figurehead. Each state had one vote, so there were 13 states. There were 13 votes. To change the Articles of Confederation required a unanimous vote. All 13 had to vote for it. So basically, it's almost impossible to change the Articles of Confederation once it was created. To pass anything required not a majority, not a supermajority, required 9 of the 13. And that's a huge bar to overcome. And so but for the first, so the U.S. Constitution came in, corrected a lot of the problems. And one of them was dividing up what we call today checks and balances, the 3 branches of the federal government, which is the legislative, Congress, the executive, the president, and the judiciary, the U.S. Supreme Court. They separated out these powers, made them independent of each other, although they were intertwined with the president can nominate members of the Supreme Court. The U.S. Senate has to approve those nominations to make them part of the Supreme Court. There was a problem in the Congress where it was, the southern states, wanted it to be where there was just the states were represented. The northern states, which were the most populous states, well, they wanted to have it be the population based. They both were, I'll be generous. No, I won't be generous. They were both trying to game the system to their own side. And then we had this brilliant guy, in addition to Thomas Jefferson, Benjamin Franklin, who just came along and said, "I want to do both." And that's why we took the legislative branch and broke it up into 2 further check and balances, with the Senate and representing the states, and the House of Representatives representing the population. And like what we have with the Electoral College, we're a republic, we're not a democracy. Because we're a republic, the Electoral College reflects this still tension between the states and the large states versus the little states. And some people want to have it the president to be elected directly, a direct vote. I think that would be a horrible thing to do, because then to just being pragmatic, the presidential candidates would only have to run for office in the biggest 5 states: California, New York, Florida, Illinois, and Texas. And they could almost just ignore all the other states. By giving electoral votes in the way it is, they have to go and actually get the entire country. Every state becomes important, especially when the elections are decided by 1 or 2 or so electoral votes. So Nebraska does get attention. Not a lot. Truth is that the big main states still get the most attention, but Iowa, except for like this time, the whole primary system starts off in Iowa, and then it goes to New Hampshire, and then eventually there's a Super Tuesday. But this was so that the primary system was so that there were small states, so that you didn't have to have a ton of. Could you imagine what the first primary was? California. Essentially, you're just running a national campaign. The little guy has no chance of breaking through. So you have Iowa and you have Little New Hampshire, where people can gain momentum. And as they gain momentum, well, then people go, oh, well, maybe that's a good guy. And then they start running with it. So don't want to get off too track with the history, but
this is cool. Yeah. I like, the history lesson that you're giving. I want to talk more about the Libertarian Party, just
sure.
to understand the beliefs. So Webster's dictionary explains libertarian as an advocate or supporter of a political philosophy that advocates only minimal state intervention in the free market and the private lives of citizens. Do you think that's a good definition of what it means to be libertarian, or would you?
It's a pretty dry definition. How I describe it in just simplest form is libertarianism is fiscally respectful and socially tolerant. It does believe libertarians like to say taxation is theft. I call it taxation is extortion. However, libertarians are not anarchists. We do not advocate no government. We just believe the government should be as small as possible, because government costs money. There's no free lunch. And every time government passes something that costs money, it comes out of taxpayers. This money doesn't just magically come out of thin air, although the Treasury has been printing money out of thin air lately. But even that printing of money out of thin air, we will have to eventually pay back that debt. It just has to be. No one's going to relieve us of that debt. No one's going to forgive us of that debt. It will be repaid. So anything the government does costs money, and that they get that money from the citizenry. And libertarians believe that we should be respectful. I believe libertarians believe that we should be respectful of the money that we take from the citizens, that we should not be taking any more than we absolutely need. I don't believe that government should ever spend any money building a statue to some politician. The arrogance of that and the disrespect to the citizenry is just phenomenal. So that's what and as far as being socially tolerant, it just means you can do what you want to do as long as you don't force your beliefs onto others. Basically, you don't rob me, you don't hurt me. Okay, we'll leave you alone. It's not the government's place to be your parents, the parent to your children. Parents should be parents of the children. Any parent that believes that the government should be parenting their children is a horrible parent. Okay, I mean, you gotta step up. You have these kids. It's your responsibility. It's not the government's responsibility, libertarians, to police the internet. That's for the sake of the old phrase, for the children. No, that's your parents' responsibility. That child does not have to have a cell phone. In fact, that child, I personally believe all girls, as soon as they can operate a cell phone, should get a cell phone. Boys, not so much. The greatest deterrent for rape has been shown to be the cell phone. A woman on a cell phone is very, very, very rarely raped, because the rapist will know. They'll scream into the phone and the cops will come running. That said, I think parents should be giving their kids phones that don't have a video camera option to it. where they can't play games and so on. Text messaging and, and phone calls. It still enables them to text all their friends, to call all their friends, but it gets them off the internet. But that's my feeling. If you're okay with your children doing that, that's great. It's not my place to tell you how to parent your child, and I don't. And I feel that's the same way with the government. It's not the government's place to parent your child or to make the world a safe place for your child. That's your responsibility. That child should be under your control, under your care, and you make the decisions. And I don't. Libertarians also believe that government does not have the answers, that politicians do not have the answers, that bureaucrats do not have the answers. That's hubris. That's elitism. Okay, the truth is, all politicians and all government bureaucrats are just as flawed as you and I. That's what they are. And they have all the same flaws as we have. And to think that they're somehow better than us is just ridiculous. Is the communist idea that you can somehow run an economy when you don't even understand all the moving parts in the economy. It is impossible to control all the parts. They try. I mean, we have many examples where the communist countries have come into existence and they've tried. The Soviet Union was probably the largest one to date. Some can say China is. But near the end, the Communist Party absolutely depended on the black market. And the black market is just capitalism without property rights. That's all the black market is. And capitalism is just voluntary exchange. At its core, as basis, is two people exchanging items and or services voluntarily. Them coming to their own decision, what's this of value? And for someone to come in and say, oh, no, that's more valuable. Well, that's up to the individual. I mean, if I have a farm and I have millions of pounds of corn, me trying to even a ton of corn for a car is workable. It would be probably very good of a decision by me. So, excuse me. So, I mean, a third party getting involved in these voluntary exchanges is it just messes up everything. And then we have now taxation, which is in every form. They were once trying to bring about a VAT tax here in America, value added tax, which is a hidden tax. You would pay it without knowing that you're paying it because the businesses would pay it at every step in the process. So the more steps of the process there is to make something, the more government can tax it, but the people wouldn't see that. Unlike with your sales tax, you can look at your receipt and going, oh, here's what I pay. Oh, there's my sales tax. Unlike income tax, oh, here's what I have to pay. So us libertarians would like to reduce down government to where it requires very low taxation. We'd like to get rid of the federal income tax. We didn't have it until 1913. The government, we ran out without it. Now I don't know if you want me now to go into.
Well, so there's a lot you brought up. So
Sure.
As far as the federal income tax, what about sales tax? Would there still be sales tax, like when you buy something at a store?
If libertarianism were to take over a government?
Yeah.
Again, libertarians are not anarchists.
Mhm.
Okay. Anarchist wants no government. So there would be no taxation in an anarchist society. But being a libertarian and having really looked into it, anarchy is a childish philosophy. Like communism is a childish philosophy. Only children would, like Santa Claus, someone's going to magically do all this for you. With anarchy, you think anarchy is. I would love for the world to be such a nice place that anarchy could exist. It would be wonderful. But I know humans, okay, and there are going to be some people that are going to use force, and anarchy results in, if you take out government, which is a gang. I freely mean government is a gang, okay, but it's a gang that in our country is heavily regulated. Some people say, "Oh, this not." No, no, it really is. You want to know what a gang looks like unregulated? You go to a street gang. That's an unregulated gang. But if you don't have government, well, then it might make right. You can how do you hold on to your land? Well, you can squat on it, but even if you squat on it, which means sitting on it, ownership by occupation. All it takes is a bigger gang to kill you or push you off it, whatever. And so it becomes a war of gangs. And think Mad Max. So yes, government is a gang, but it's a gang that is heavily regulated, has been voted by the people. In our country, we have a constitution that heavily regulates it. Some people don't understand the Constitution is not made to restrict us. The Constitution is to restrict the federal government. And it is the Bill of Rights. They're called negative rights. Okay. A negative right is something that you are inherently you have. A positive right is an oxymoron, I believe. It means that the government is giving you something. Well, libertarians go, well, who's going to pay for that giving? If the government gives you something, someone else is paying for that something. And so it's not a right when someone else has to pay for it. It's a right when you don't have to pay. Freedom of speech. No, you can just speak your mind. Freedom of assembly. You can get together. That's the type of libertarianism will view as. Communism is the idea that from each ability to each his needs. That's hilarious. Because again, human nature. Okay, from each's ability to each's needs. So I will get the same regardless of what I do, because my needs are the same. Well, what's the minimum I have to do to get those needs made? And so then you have basically communist society. I like calling it, it's a slacker society. Everyone's slacking off, doing the absolute minimum not to get into trouble. And that's what happened in Russia. It was, I know a lot of people don't like McDonald's, but McDonald's is a perfect example. When McDonald's came into Russia, McDonald's has high standards. Contrary to what people believe, McDonald's actually has insane high standards. They revolutionized the restaurant industry in America. They revolutionized the industry in Russia. And when they came into Russia, McDonald's believes in local sourcing, okay, buying locally. And that's just economics. I mean, shipping something from far away you have to pay for that shipping. So if I can buy it locally, I don't have to pay for as much shipping. They went into Russia and they added lettuce, and this lettuce came with slugs in it. Like, whoa, whoa. Slugs.
Oh wow, yeah, that's not good for business.
Dirt, worms, and McDonald's people are like, what's what? And they're like, well, that's common. The Russians are like, well, yeah, that's what you just expect. You have to clean when you get home. No, we expect in America, we expect that lettuce to be delivered clean. So what McDonald's did is they revolutionized the entire agricultural system in Russia to service their restaurants. They gave them incentives, capitalism. Hey, if you bring this stuff done this way, like no dirt, no slugs, no worms, we will pay you more. And the farmers are like, yeah, that's a pretty good deal. And so that's how McDonald's revolutionized the entire agricultural system in Russia. I think it's a hilarious story that I'm just amazed that someone hasn't done a movie about it yet. Because I could just imagine, could you imagine being a McDonald's executive coming in and looking at lettuce with slugs on it and going, you gotta be kidding me. So anyways, that's what libertarian is. I don't want to get too much into it. I can go as far. I can go as deep as you want.
Hey, this is cool. I like the explanation that you gave. So basically, you believe that the federal government has too much power in our lives, and that we need to restrict it.
Well, the first 100 years of our country, we ran with a very small federal government. Mm-hmm. There were always forces that want to have a powerful central government. Alexander Hamilton was one. He wanted a national bank. There were forces that are anti. centralized power. Thomas Jefferson was for the states to be doing the most. Andrew Jackson wanted to kill the national bank. That was part of his campaign platform. Was doing, and he did when he got into office. He killed the national bank. Another force that was knocking down centralized power is the U.S. Supreme Court. Congress had passed a law, president signed it, Supreme Court looking at it, go, nope, no, that's not in the Constitution, strikes it down. And this was what happened for the first 100 years of our country. Congress, the president would try to gain more power, and Supreme Court, nope, no, that's against the Constitution. Then at 100 years, the Supreme Court changed. It had a majority of the justices were for centralized power. And so then I don't want to call them federalists because I don't want to get your viewers to learn. Federalists are actually for states. Okay. We have weird terminology in this country, just like National Guard. Nope, that's really a state guard because the governor is in charge of the National Guard, but they're called National Guard. Federalists are actually for states. There's not really a term for the federal government, pro-federal government, because in our culture, there really isn't much in it. That's not really a force. But there were those that wanted a centralized power. So they took the general welfare clause, which in reading the Constitution, there's a phrase in there where the states will come to the general welfare of other states. Okay, that's called the general welfare clause. And if you read the founding fathers, what they meant was come to the defense of another country. Britain attacks New York. The rest of the states go, well, too bad, sucks to be you. They all come to the defense, the general welfare of that state. Well, the pro-centralized power advocates said, well, wait a second, but that could mean the individual. And the Supreme Court said for 100 years, shot down this interpretation. But then they got a Supreme Court that said, oh, well, yeah, we couldn't make that. And there's also the Commerce Clause. The Commerce Clause is just basically to prevent tariffs between states. Again, Articles of Confederation, each state was just basically an independent little country. And they actually had tariffs between each other. They were trying to get this between each other. And it caused a lot of problems. And so U.S. Constitution, we're not having any of that. Well, it was all little cracks in the dam. That's how it was never some gigantic overhaul of the federal government. It's little cracks in the dam that the pro-centralized power advocates got. And then, well, once you have that crack in the dam, you can just break it open and let the floodgates, the floods happen. With the Commerce Clause, it was the railroads. The railroads, your viewers have to understand it. During the Revolutionary War, the fastest transportation was horse and ship, and they were both very, very slow. Weather affected them tremendously. Roads became muddy, impassable. You would literally be held up at what we would call an inn today, which basically was rooms above basically a bar. You'd hold up there until the roads dried out enough so that your carriage could go through, or you could even ride a horse through. And ships it's all up to the winds. No wind, that ship is staying in port. We don't have any rowing oars on ships at that point. No slave labor going, row, which is why they had slaves on board ships, was so when the wind didn't blow, the slaves could provide propulsion. And when the wind did blow, the slaves didn't row because they couldn't keep up with the wind when it was pushing hard. Anyways, the railroad was this brand technology. You could literally be on a train and go through several states in a day. If you read the silliness that scientists have said at the time that women shouldn't be on these trains because it will destroy if they're pregnant, it will kill the child, or that we can't go about 35 miles per hour because the body can't handle that speed because man was never designed to go that fast. Anyways, it was a new technology. And so that's when the centralized power advocates, that's the crack in the dam. Say, hey, we need to regulate this. And the Supreme Court, yeah, we probably should regulate. That was the crack in the dam for commerce. Now the federal government can tell almost anything they regulate almost every aspect of business now. With the general welfare clause, a famous crack in the dam was Social Security. The original Social Security was only for widows and orphans. That was it. Okay. And that's how they got it through Congress. I mean, imagine the politician. You're against widows and orphans? What a monster you must be. Crack in the dam. Okay. I mean, us guys, we would get nothing from Social Security at that time. Nothing. Okay. And orphans, people forget that today, people forget that orphans were part of Social Security. They're not anymore. They're handled by other agencies now. But when it was widows, it was 65. Okay. Well, 65 at that time was the average life expectancy of white women. Okay. But if you can think of that, they expected half of a white woman to be dead. I mean, this was you reach 65. I'm 61 now, and I have a friend that, of course, I talk to every day. She's 86. She would be considered an ancient in the past. Okay.
Yeah.
And back then, it goes by fives. You can get into really, statistically, but basically, the average life expectancy of white women was 65. Average life expectancy of white men was 60. Average life expectancy of a black woman was 55. Average life expectancy of a black man was 50. Okay, so us guys,
we die earlier.
We die. I mean, today, our life expectancy is like 70. So like maybe we're looking at 5 years, and then the dice start rolling against us. Mm-hmm. But the fortunate part about that is that we fixated that age. Okay, now we're living longer. Average life expectancy for women, I think, is 80, 85. I mean, on the bright side, at least now black men are up to 65. But it's just because they fixed that date on it, that's a problem that we have now today, when they should have put it at the average life expectancy of whoever they wanted to be. At that time, us guys would never have been considered. It would have been just women. But average life expectancy of women would have been at this time. I don't think they would have had the balls to say white women. Okay.
Yeah.
But they would have said the average life expectancy of women. So it would be about what? About 60. Okay. But then that as the women were able to live longer, that age of eligibility should have gradually increased, so that it's only half of them getting there. So, but that was the crack in the dam. Widows and orphans. How can you be against this? What type of a monster are you? Your citizen would be upset because everyone wants to take care of widows and orphans. And again, for women, it wasn't all women. Okay, if you were married and you were 65, you got nothing. Okay, which also brought the whole issue of, did women, it could have happened, but they're married, they're 65, they're not doing as well as they could on Social Security.
They kill their husband.
yeah. At that stage, you better be a good husband. Yes, dear. Thank you, dear. You made me something to eat. How about if I cook from now on? No, you want to cook from now on. Okay, hi, dear. I love you. I love you. She's not saying back. Here, dog. Here, do you want to have some food? But anyways, that's how centralized power. Now, the federal government, there's almost no check on that. They're involved in every aspect of it. And the reason why we have that is because we have federal politicians, we have state politicians, we have county politicians, we have municipal politicians, we have school board members, etc. But let me take it back up to the federal level, which is where my amendment deals with. If you're a federal politician, the only way you can affect the United States and the world, by the way, is through federal laws. Okay, well, it's the old saying. If you're a hammer, all problems look like nails. Okay. So you're a federal politician, you want to have impact. This is why they want to have more power. This is why the advocates want more power to the federal government, because then they can go and do something. A politician wants to have impact. All politicians want to have impact. There's no politician that became a politician. Well, there's a few rare examples. Okay, George Washington being one of them. He did not want to be president. It took the smartest person alive at that time, Thomas Jefferson, to convince him to be president. And basically, Thomas Jefferson's argument was, you did all these years in the Revolutionary War. You are the only man that this country will get behind, and you're not willing to give 4 more years, so they can Saudize this country behind you? Come on. And then if you read about the lifetime of George Washington during his first term, he died. He was really sick. He's so sick that Washington, D.C. didn't exist yet. It was Philadelphia, and they put hay on the streets in front of what was the presidential residence because they didn't want the horses to wake George Washington up because he was sick. And then 4 years, George Washington was like, I'm out of here. I am gone. Kiss my ass. Took again the smartest man probably this country has ever had, Thomas Jefferson, and went in to convince him to give him just 4 more years, just give this country 4 more years. We're not yet solidized behind everything quite yet. And George Washington was like that. But I tell you what, Thomas Jefferson, smartest man ever, he knew he could never get George Washington for a third term. George Washington was gone. You read about the history. When he came close, everything was packed up and already shipped home. The residence was pretty much empty. It was like, I am gone. But aside from him, there's always been contentions. I don't want to get into the weeds.
I got you. I'll tell you what. Let's dive into this amendment. So basically, This amendment is to give power back to the states.
Essentially, it's not technically, not literally.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, what this amendment actually does is creates a new politician in our country. It creates a politician who's both a federal politician and a state politician, and by them being that, they will then decide where they think that. I think, well, maybe we should go through the amendments so that I don't jump the gun.
Let's go through them one by one. So,
sure.
What's the name of this amendment? You call it the States First Amendment, or
States First Amendment? It is right now. If this is viewed in the future, okay. Mm-hmm. Currently, right now, there's America First, okay, and so I thought, well, kind of states first. It's just kind of a play on words. So I call it States First Amendment. So it is a state rights amendment. The original name for the amendment was States Rights Amendment, but I thought it'd be more catchy to call it States First.
All right, then. So the First Amendment, it's one amendment, but the first section of it is each state gets one vote in the U.S. Senate. That vote goes to that state's current governor. A current state governor can serve as the U.S. vice president, and governors cannot be compensated in any way or form for their service to the U.S. Senate or the office of the U.S. vice president. So let's break that down. Explain this one to me and why you think it is a good thing to do.
Okay. What I'm doing with Section 1 and Section 2, Section 2 deals with the U.S. House of Representatives in a similar way. Basically, what I'm doing is bringing the federal government up to the 21st century. Hello, folks. Back when this Constitution was written, the fastest transportation was horses and ships. Okay, right now we're doing something that would be considered magical back to that time. We're having an instantaneous conversation. Where are you located?
I am in Cincinnati, Ohio.
I'm in Iowa City, Iowa. Okay, but we're instantaneously talking to each other across hundreds of miles, if not thousands. Well, not thousands, but 1,000. That was not possible back then. That's why we have a U.S. House of Representatives and a U.S. Senate, because, back then they didn't even think what we're able to do now. This is just, even the science fiction quote-unquote writers at that time would never even conceive of the technology we have now. So each state elected 2 U.S. senators. Actually, at that time, it was the state Senate that elected the U.S. senators and sent them to Congress. The population voted for the House of Representatives. That was a direct vote, a direct democracy, to have them. And then they would You have to understand, back at that time, this country was an agricultural country.
Yeah, farming.
Farming was like, I forget, it was like something almost as like 98% of everyone was involved in agriculture one way or the other. There's very little industry here in this country. It was mainly located in the north, but the industrial age had not yet hit America yet. Okay. So what happened is that you had George Washington, Thomas Jefferson, many members of the U.S. Senate and the U.S. House of Representatives were farmers. Okay. And they didn't get paid anything initially. I don't believe the president I know didn't get paid anything. George Washington went into debt. George Washington left office almost poor because he knew that he was setting a precedent for all future presidents. So he was very conscious of everything he did, and he wanted to have the president have dignity, and so he spent his own money so that the public would respect the office of the presidency. So anyways, they all went home. They had to be back home. They had to go back and take care of the farms. That's how they made their money. So what happened is that when the harvest happened, after the harvest was done, okay, and notice the agricultural year was over. There were other aspects, but basically the bulk of it was done. The crops were brought in, they were harvested. The cattle were slaughtered because to carry cattle over the winter meant you had to have grain, etc. So you would slaughter them. We have preserved a lot of meat back then. Salt was a heavy part of your diet. But then with the members that were elected to go to Congress, they would then travel, try to get to Washington, D.C. before the roads became too muddy. In other words, fall. And also mainly before they got frozen over, which made them even harder to pass because they didn't have paved roads back then. They didn't have gravel roads back then. It was all mud. When you were in a city, if you were lucky, it was a really big city, you might have brick roads. Okay. Everything was covered in shit, horse shit. Okay. It was a horrible time to live. But they literally, it's called winter. They would winter in Washington, D.C. They'd get into Washington, D.C., they could get their homes, and then everyone hunkered down for the winter. Well, so then they all met in Congress. Okay, now all the legislation, all the bills that were going to be passed, all the reviews, all the committees and subcommittee meetings were all happened during winter, but then spring came, and then once the roads became passable, the session, okay, as what used to be called now, there's no stop to it. The session and the congressional session would end so that all the members could go back to their farms and take care of the harvest, and that was the end of the federal year. Today, again, we have technology that you don't have to do that. There's technology today that you and I could be working on the same Word document in live. I make a change, you would instantaneously see the change I'm making to that document as we're writing. You and I could agree. There's some hardware that office people use that everyone has to agree, or the head person has to agree, and then that change goes from red to black. In other words, this is made part of the document. That was not possible back then. It is possible now. All I'm doing is basically enabling Congress to telecommute to work. They don't have to be in Washington, D.C. But then that brings about another issue. Okay, well, let's say we just bring about the Congress can telecommute to work. Well, now you have two U.S. senators sitting in their state, and there's a governor in their state. Well, when you think who represents your state, everyone says governor, not the U.S. senators. Okay, governor, you represent a state, and I don't know of a single governor that has ever said they do not represent the state that they're the governor of. Okay, they have to take in all the state issues, and all these governors pay close attention to what the federal government does, because whatever they do is going to affect their state. That's why you have governors talking on federal legislation that's coming through, going, "Hey, wait a second, that's going to affect our state in this way. This is wrong." Okay, so it's not the idea that governors are blind to what the federal government does, or they're not interested in what the federal government does. They're acutely interested in what the federal government does because of how much it has an impact on their state and what that will mean, what funds they get or lack they don't get, how a certain bill that. See, the problem with federal government is one size fits all. Well, these states are, unlike in Europe, okay? You look at Europe, France is pretty much the same, okay? Belgium is pretty much the same. America, we're not. We literally have swamps, snow-covered mountains. We have deserts. In Florida, they have hurricanes. In the Midwest, we have tornadoes. On the West Coast, they have earthquakes. The truth of the matter is, we don't like saying it, but the truth of the matter is, Floridians don't give a shit about tornadoes or earthquakes. Midwesterners don't give a shit about hurricanes or earthquakes. West Coasters don't give a shit about tornadoes or hurricanes, okay? They are all concerned about their own little problems that they have. That's what the states are focused on, their own little problem. But the federal government has this one size fits all. Okay, and that rarely ever works out. Okay, for men, we have one size fits all socks. Okay, and shirts. I have a brother who's 6'8". One size does not fit all. Okay,
yeah.
he has shoes that I could canoe in. Okay, So what happens in my situation is, one, we don't. If you're the U.S. senators are already back in their state. They're already telecommuting. Well, why do we have them there? Okay, why not just give their votes to the governor? Okay, so we take the U.S. Senate, we reduce it from 100 to 50, and they're all the current governors. Okay, and then if you want to go through the other parts of the section.
Hey, sorry to interrupt. But are you looking to reach a dynamic and engaged audience of curious minds? Well, look no further. Bright Brains Podcast is the perfect platform to showcase your business or product. You'll be able to reach a diverse, intelligent audience and engage with listeners passionate about personal development, technology, and more. Elevate your brand through thought-provoking discussions. Don't miss this opportunity to promote your business on one of the fastest growing podcasts in the market. Contact us today to discuss advertising options and elevate your brand to the next level. Contact us at brightbrainspod@gmail.com to secure your advertising spot on Bright Brains today. Again, that's Bright Brains with a Z, pod, pod@gmail.com. Now, back to the podcast. Yeah. So basically what you're saying is just get rid of the U.S. Senate and just replace that function with the governors.
We don't get rid of the U.S. Senate. We just replace the 2 U.S. senators each state sends to the Senate with
the governors.
With the governor. So the Senate still exists. It goes from 100 members to 50, and that's all the members that's all the governors combined. If we have more states, we'll have more governors.
Gotcha. It makes sense. All right, and then the second amendment or the second section, is.
Well, do you want to cover the last part, the other parts in there?
Well, I think what it says: the current state governor can serve as the U.S. vice president, and the governors cannot. Yeah, they can't be compensated for their service in the Senate. So they are being compensated for being governor, right?
Right. If the state members of the citizens of their state wants to pay them more, they're more than welcome to pay them more. But I don't want to get to where, like right now, we have senators and House of Representatives that going, you know what? I think we need a pay raise. Yes. All in favor in the Congress to give ourselves more money? Raise your hand. Oh my gosh, it's surprising. So very few ever vote against any pay raises. This just eliminates that. So it's not a backdoor way of getting more money from the governors. They have to go to their state legislatures. So we save money at the federal level. In the grand scheme of things, very little, but I think symbolically it says a lot. The current governor potentially being the vice president. Well, the vice president, like Will Rogers, he was a famous comedian back in the day, and he said he has the best job in the country. The only thing he has to do is wake up every morning and says, "How's the president?" I mean, it's a meaningless job that I personally would eliminate. There's no cause for it. There's no reason for it. But we have it. And so why not have a current governor be it? Because whatever the vice president does is basically given to him or her by the president. There have been vice presidents have literally done nothing because the president would give them anything. Okay, there are presidents that totally shut out their vice president to when. And there have been cases where they have had presidents that have died, and the vice president has to be brought up to speed because he hasn't been brought up to speed until then. So it's a meaningless position. If we're going to still have it be a governor, and then we save the cost of the vice president. You know, there'll probably still be other ones, but anyways. So go into section 2.
All right, so Section 2, each state's votes in the U.S. House of Representatives are equally divided amongst all of that state's current state assembly members. Each current state assembly member is also a full member of the U.S. House of Representatives, and none of them can be compensated in any way or form for their service to the U.S. House of Representatives. So basically, just what I'm thinking, what you're saying is, you know, each state has their own Senate
state assembly,
and the state assembly, yeah. And so basically, that takes the place of the U.S. House of Representatives,
right? Because the state assembly in every state is basically the House of Representative for that state. For those of your viewing audience who are from another country, basically the House of Representatives and state assembly are parliament. They represent the population. What I do is to explain what I said in that section. Let's say your state has 10 votes in the U.S. House of Representatives, just for easy math purposes, and your state assembly has 100 members, which is actually rather large for a state assembly. What this amendment would do is to take that 10 votes in the U.S. House of Representatives, divide it by 100, and so each member of the state assembly would get 1.1% of a vote. So when bills come up, they vote, those fractions are added up, and then we decide whether or not that bill passes or not, depending on the parliamentary rules at that time, whether it's a simple majority or supermajority that's needed. So that's all it does. It's the same argument made for why we don't need U.S. senators when we have the governor, and the same argument here for this. Now, since we've covered, we need to cover the next section, and then I can talk about what all this means.
All right.
I think. And just to let you know, by full members of, they're a full member of the House of Representatives. This means that they have all the rights and privileges of a U.S. House of Representatives. It just means they're not treated poorly,
Gotcha. All right. So the third section is all U.S. senators can propose and vote on legislative bills from their states. All U.S. House of Representatives can propose and vote on legislative bills from their districts and the state's capital. And all congressional committee and subcommittee meetings must be conducted by way of video conferencing. So let's delve into that.
This is section 3 is a parliamentary rule section. Some of your viewers might not know this, but there's famous examples of this. Senator Feinstein is the latest one. There have been times when they have wheeled in on their deathbeds into the Senate so a senator can vote on a bill. Okay, they have to be on the Senate floor to vote. Okay, or to propose. If you want to, and the same thing happens in the U.S. House of Representatives. You have to propose a bill to the Senate, and then you have to have another member second that vote. And they propose a bill. In the Senate, it's called the president. The president will then say, "Does anyone second this vote?" In the U.S. House of Representatives, that role is taken by the Speaker of the House, and they say, "Does anyone second the vote?" And so someone else says, "I second that vote." So the best bills that have the best chance of succeeding typically is a Republican or a Democrat proposing the bill, and then the opposite party member seconding that bill. Basically, what they're saying to their chamber, this is a bipartisan bill. whether or not it is, it doesn't matter. But that's why they have a Republican and a Democrat, one proposed and the other one second, to show us a bipartisanship. But they have to do that in their chamber. This is a parliamentary say, no, you can do this back at the states. There was, for my state, home state, my home state is Wisconsin. There was a Senator Feingold, and he ran on the platform. His campaign platform was, "I will live in Wisconsin. I won't travel to Washington, D.C." And Washington, D.C. said, "Oh, so you don't want to propose any bill or vote on anything?" And so basically, he went to Washington, D.C. It was all, they used a parliamentary mechanism to force him to come to Washington, D.C. This is just parliamentary saying you can now telecommute. That's what this is about. And as far as committees and subcommittees having to be done with video conferencing, well, I believe there should be a transparency in our government. I don't believe it should be behind closed doors. They will try to, and they'll still try to do it. There's always going to be backroom negotiating, etc. But at least the meetings are going to be open hopefully to the public, so we can see them. And we'd love to have all of them. A lot of them are now. Okay, a lot of them are now. Some probably will never be. There's in the U.S. Senate, there's the Intelligence Committee, which obviously can't be made public because, well, here's what we're learning from the Russians right now. Probably not want to televise that too much. I'm sure the Russians might go, "Hey, maybe we should tune into this one." So that's just parliament. Now, with all this now combined, now I can talk about what happens. I create, the first time in American history, a dual-powered politician. I create a politician who's both a federal politician and a state politician. They can propose and vote on bills in both federal bills and state bills. Now, this one of the reasons I think this is going to cause the government to be shifted back to the states, and for one simple reason: impact. Let's say you are a state assembly member. Okay, Isaac is a state assembly member from what was your state again? I'm sorry,
Ohio. Yeah.
Okay, you're a state assembly member from Ohio. Let's say, I'm sure there's a lot of Isaac is a state assembly member from the 10th district of Ohio. Or do you know your district number?
I actually don't. Okay. But yeah, let's go with the 10th.
You're from the 10th. Okay. And let's say, using again just for simple mathematics, that you are one of 100 state assembly members in your state assembly. Okay. With my amendment, there will now be 5,462 U.S. House Representatives. You're a politician. You became a politician because you want to have impact. I think all your viewers can understand that if you have a bill in the state and you had a bill at the federal level, you as a state representative, where will you have the most impact? One of 100 or one of 5,462?
One of 100.
One of 100. Just like this also plays to the governor. Well, as a governor, he is governor, top dog of his state. Okay, he's the one that gets to sign or veto bills. Okay, but in the U.S. Senate, my U.S. Senate, he's one of 50. So where would he have the most impact, at the state level or in the Senate? State level.
Oh, state level, yeah.
State level. So now you have these governors and state assembly members have the same issues of impact. You have a country that is very diverse, geographically diverse, industrial diverse, racially diverse, religiously diverse. It is a very diverse country, but within their states, there's kind of a uniformity to it. Okay. Up in Boston, they all talk the same. Everyone wants some clam chowder. You want some chowder? Okay, so they actually know how they can speak to each other. I don't know if you've ever been to Texas, but they have that. It's very interesting to listen to a Texan person talk. It's like right out of a Wild West movie. Okay. So they know that they'll have the most impact on their state. They know that they know the state better than they know the country. And so I believe what they're going to be doing is they're going to be saying, you know what, we can do this stuff in our state and not have the federal government do it. Here's the truth of the matter is every state has every federal district but 3. Every federal department but 3. Okay. Every state has a Department of Education. Okay. Has the Department of Commerce, has a, all the ones except for 3, which is defense, state, diplomacy, and treasury, printing of the money. Okay. But even within those 3 departments, well, every state has a National Guard. That's actually part of defense. Okay. Some states will go out and talk to other countries, trying to convince them to open up a factory in their state. So they're doing a little bit of diplomacy there. And there was at one time in our country history that every state has its own currency. Okay. Counterfeiting was rampant because of this. Okay. That's one reason why we have one currency at the federal level, because they could spend enough money to buy the expensive printing presses that made counterfeiting harder and harder and harder. Now we have strips running through our currency. We have microfilaments in there. You can take a pen and you can go like this and it will turn a certain color if it's fake or if it's real. So I believe that will remain at the federal level, but all the other ones, every state has essentially, might not call it this, but every state has a Department of Interior. Well, that's state parks, state preserves. And that goes all the way down. There are county parks, there are municipal parks, but at the state level, they have that. And so I don't think they need to have the federal government dictate what they do in their state. And also the federal government has been just unbelievably unkind to all the Western states. And I think it's Nevada. 80% of all land is owned by the federal government. New York is 0.8% or 0.08% of the land is the federal government. That's the shutting the barn door after the horse is already gone. They're imposing eastern states imposing their will on the Western states. I think they can decide what they want to do with their own land. And that will just naturally happen as they have more and more impact. I think it will be overnight, maybe not. I mean, there's a politician in Argentina that just knocking out federal departments, and they have like 150% inflation rate down there. So hard times require hard actions. We are not at that stage yet in our country. But I believe because of where the politicians have impact, that they're going to be saying, no, we can do this in our state. We don't have to have the federal government do this. So I believe there's going to be a natural, gradual, some cases not gradual, like the FBI and Justice Department. I think if Trump gets elected, I bet you they will be just eliminated. The FBI was created with an executive order. It only takes an executive order to disband the FBI. The Justice Department and the FBI have been made into political weapons, which is nothing new, folks. Yes, Biden's doing it now. Every president has been doing it. Okay, they use this. They use to go after their opponents. I mean, John F. Kennedy used it against the steel companies. Okay, raided them. Basically said, I can push you around to force them to go what he wanted with the union negotiations. Reagan used it. All the presidents have used it. Trump has to a certain extent, but he was dealing with, I think he just never got around to it. I think he was dealing with other issues at that time, but he might have. I mean, if he didn't have other major issues to deal with, he might have used it just like a political weapon. But the thing of it is that I think Trump didn't because he wasn't a politician. He didn't understand about making something a political weapon because he was not a politician. So it was like, well, what? He was approaching as a businessman coming at business at the government. He knew he only had at most 4 years, but for 8 years. So he knew he had limited time. So, but if you're a career politician like Biden, Reagan, Bush, John F. Kennedy, all the way back to when the FBI was created and the Justice Department before that, they all use it as political weapons. They all had their own mechanisms to attack their own opponents. But That those two departments, if Trump gets reelected, which I'm pretty sure he will be, I'm a libertarian. I'm going to be voting for the Libertarian Party. I voted for the Libertarian Party candidate 2016, 2020. So if your people think that I'm a trumpeter, I'm not. But aside from those, I think the other departments are going to be just the Congress and the Senate are just going to look okay, and then they're going okay. Basically, it's just logic. It's like, okay, you're governor. You are the state assembly member from the 10th district in Ohio. Okay, just think of your own frame of mind. Okay, you have to deal with educational bills all the time. Now I'm going to have to deal with educational bills at the federal and state level. I'm doubling my workload. Why don't we just do this at the state level? Where I have a better grasp of what's going on. And so that's why I think that these departments are just going to shrink. Some are just going to go away. The education department was created by President Carter. I think that is the one that will just go away. But like Department of Interior, they're basically being a transfer of power from. Well, we have these national parks. Well, now I can see where the states are going to go. Well, let's have those be state parks. So transferring the ownership from the federal government to the state governments, there's going to be arguments, all this other stuff. That's fine, okay? But it's going to be the states are going to be more powerful. But that's simply because we're eliminating duplication that is happening at the federal level right now. And simply because they create new politicians who's both a federal politician and a state politician. We're not going to get rid of the military. Okay. That's asinine. Okay. But we may change the military. States, a soldier's a job. Okay. Every state wants jobs. So we have all these. See, right now, the federal politicians, they don't give a shit about really jobs in their state in a way, except for, pork barrel politics. But they want to have impact on the world. And so we have, 153 overseas military bases, and that's just military bases. Every embassy is essentially a military base because we have I think it's the Marines that are there. We have all other places that are not called bases, but they're basically military bases. We have our military all over the world. That might not change. Might not. The new Congress might just say, yeah, we're fine with what it is. On the other hand, they might say, let's bring those soldiers home because those can be jobs that can increase our economy. So there might be a lot of overseas bases that are just closed down, and those soldiers are brought home. And when they're brought home, you don't need a standing army in a state, but you do need National Guard. Every state needs a National Guard. A disaster hits, they're called out. I mean, it's the first thing out of, if a governor doesn't call out a National Guard, they get shit for not doing that. Okay. Yeah. A tornado hits. Well, you're in Ohio. Tornado hits. That National Guard better be there. And by the way, National Guard, they shoot looters. Okay. Mm-hmm. They have big signs to put out. Looters will be shot. They're not cops. Okay. But hurricane hits in Florida, National Guard. Okay. Earthquake hits California, National Guard. Okay. They're brought out to handle this. So I think what's going to happen is then instead of them being, and also there's you might not understand, but there's also a reserve. There's a military reserve. Every branch has a reserve. But that is like the president's National Guard in a state. The governor cannot call upon the reserve. They can only call upon the National Guard. This happens. The governor and state assembly members can get rid of that reserve, make them all National Guard. Again, duplication at a federal level. And then we have not standing active duty soldiers, make them National Guard, make them part-time soldiers. At one time, do we need a standing guard, a military? Not really, because we have the Atlantic and Pacific on both sides. We can now act, but with telecommunication, like what we have now, with the telephone, okay, the email, the internet, we can activate a National Guard extremely fast now. Okay. When National Guard first started, you had to send out messengers to activate National Guard. I mean, kind of like Paul Revere. The Redcoats are coming. The Redcoats are coming. Okay. Now it's email. It's up. Your commander calls you up. Come on in, and that's it. Okay, so I don't think we'll have a standing guard and a reserve. We'll have just a national guard. They'll be beefed up a bit, and that will just help out their states. But then again, they might look at that and say, "Oh, we have too much national guard." They may reduce it down. But that's going to be up to. I think each state's going to determine how much national guard they need, and just like the training they need. I mean, the truth of the matter is that there's different challenges with the disaster that happens. We don't have. In the Midwest, we don't worry about flooding from a hurricane. We don't, there's called surge water. We don't, you say surge water to people and they think your toilet's backing up. What are you talking about? But that's a problem with hurricanes. Okay. When a tornado hits, it rips apart the infrastructure differently than how an earthquake rips apart the structure. Is like a laser beam that cuts through a community and rips out power lines, where in California it hits everything all at once. Just okay. Anyways, so this is how I believe is a states' rights amendment, in the aspect that I believe that once we have this dual powered politicians, they'll see that they'll get rid of the federal duplication at this, and just to go with their state level. They'll still have federal departments, defense, state, and treasury, though they may change. Although the state probably will change very little, because the state is, in case you probably don't know, the state, again, we have weird terminology. The State Department at the federal government does not have anything to do with the states of the United States. The State Department it represents the nation to other countries. Is our diplomacy wing. So that's I don't think that's going to change practically at all, except for the next section.
All right, so the next section is the fourth one. The U.S. president must physically visit every state in the union and U.S. territory at least once a year. So this one was interesting to me because it feels like a lot. There are 50 states, and then there are three or four territories.
It all depends it all depends how you classify a territory. I think we have up to 17 territories, but they have different administrative policies. Some are closer to being statehood, some are self-autonomous. Like Puerto Rico is self-autonomous, but there are other ones that are, I believe they call it dependencies, where basically we run the territory for them because they have such a small population. It'd be asking a lot for them to turn around and to run their territory. So we send in people, we send in federal bureaucrats to take care of the organizational aspects of their thing. So you don't have that huge debt falling. But Puerto Rico, boy, that they have more than enough population to be basically self-autonomous.
Gotcha. So that once a year, so that's probably about 4 or 5 states a month. That's like if he's trying to get to all of them.
Oh, I tell you what's going to happen. I'll tell you what's going to happen.
What's going to happen?
50 states, 52 weeks a year. Every state is going to demand, we want our week. We want the president here for our week. Okay, for 1 week. Because what's going to happen? All these state politicians know what's going to happen. The entire nation is going to turn its attention to that state for that week. This is a time when they can show off their state. You don't think the tourism industry in that state is going to tell the governor, you better take the president to whatever this national park we have, or in Wisconsin, we have Wisconsin Dells. And the industries, they want to show off their industries. And basically, it's a way for them to promote themselves to companies all around the country, if not the world, saying, "Hey, look, we have this gigantic manufacturing basis here. Because we have coal right next to us, and we're well connected with railroads, or we have a seaport." They'll want to show that on off. And I don't care if the state's 100% Democrat as a Republican president, or the state's 100% Republican and is a Democrat president. They're all going to demand that president be there for 1 week. Now, this doesn't mean they're not going to be, I hate him, but they want this country to come to their state so they can see them go, I hate him. They want the press. They want the attention. Mm-hmm. And also, if you think about it, the president is a very powerful person. The states have him they get the presidency here for 1 week. Okay. But the president's not going to treat these states like shit. No. These states, those governors are also U.S. senators. Those state assembly members are also House of Representatives. He wants any of his bills to pass through Congress. He's got to kiss their asses, just like they're going to kiss his ass to get bills they want him to vote or veto. Okay, so it is going to be, and also, I mean, George Washington. Okay, again, someone that's not. I think this country owes him a debt that is just unbelievable. He's the first president to visit all states. Well, there's only 13 at a time, but he felt it was very important for the people whom he governed to see who governed them. Okay. The next president to visit all the states was Nixon.
Okay.
That's
interesting.
Yeah. And you know why he was able to do that?
Why is that? Because of
Air Force One.
Oh, Air Force.
Air Force One. Okay, because before, what did presidents have? I mean, George Washington, he rode in a carriage. Oh, and again, a person that's very aware of his image. He had a famous white horse. Okay, he got out to near the city limits. He get out of the carriage. He get on his horse, and even though he might not be in good health, it was showtime, and because people expected to see George Washington ride on his horse into the city. Okay, but he traveled by horse. Basically carriage by horse. So then later on, we have what is called whistle stops, which was trains. When Abraham Lincoln was killed, it was a funeral train that took his body back to Illinois, and every state wanted that train to come through. It was, oh my God, you talk about atrocities that are done to a corpse. And that's where we get embalming from, by the way. Embalming became a thing because they embalmed Abraham Lincoln. And before that, it was just, you didn't want to embalm. That's why at that time, the dead body was laid in the living room of your house. Friends and family came over, and it was all done in a day. And then the body was buried at the end of that day because that body was going to rot. Okay. But because of Abraham Lincoln and the embalming, oh, wow, he looks lifelike. It wasn't. It was all, just read about the history of that. It was just, thank goodness he wasn't alive. But that's where embalming came from. But they had trains, and there used to be a whistle stop. FDR had famous, his whistle stop speeches. Teddy Roosevelt whistle stop his speeches. Where literally the train would stop in the middle of the city, and whistle stop, and the president would give a speech. When presidential election years, all the candidates rode by train, and they would have little whistle stop speeches. They'd stop and they'd give a speech, and then move on to the next city. Well, then this whole thing came with airplanes. And just like any new technology, a lot of people were afraid of this new technology. And the airplanes were just like any new technology. They had their bugs. So it was not the most safest form of travel to go by air. Okay, you were called daredevils. I mean, literally, that's what they were called, daredevil pilots. You'd go to your county carnival to watch someone fly a plane. And I was like, oh, wow. Farmers would pay money to be in the plane to go and see their crops. My uncle Shirley, a guy named Shirley, when he was born, Shirley Temple had not yet become a star, so that's why he was Shirley. Sure, you like today, Jody is a male-female name. When he was born, Shirley was male-female name. But that's what he did, and my dad took the tickets, sold the tickets, and the farmers want to go and look. And this is the first time in their life to see their farm in its entirety. Okay. Today we do satellite pictures, but back then that was basically the satellite of their time. So it was until Nixon that I think one president was comfortable enough to visit all the states. And we have the Air Force One. And I read your question, so you might want to ask.
All right. So basically, I think you kind of just explained why, but the thing is, it seems like it will be a logistical nightmare. And it also seems like it will be hard to keep the president safe if he's constantly on the move. And I wonder how much money would have to be spent on security, keeping him safe, if he's constantly in a different state every week.
Well, okay, there's different ways of looking at that. I'll take having the president live in one building all the time. Mm-hmm. Okay, let's bomb that building.
Okay. But it
we know
hasn't
he's going to
happened.
be there. We have come close a lot of times. We've had a lot of attacks at them. And if you go to the White House today, when I went there, I went there when I was 16 in 1976, the bicentennial celebration with my dad. My parents took every time we turned 16, I have three brothers. When you turn 16, you went to Washington, D.C. with one of the parents. I went there at 76. I went there recently. The White House I went to, you could just walk in, you signed in, you showed your ticket from your House Representative, or we got ours from our senator, and you got a tour of the White House. Today, you're going through metal detectors. I mean, the only thing they're not doing is cavity checks, okay? And they really are, because of the scans that they have now. It's a totally different world. It's more of an armored bunker than it is a residency. And there's also, people don't understand, there's a gigantic infrastructure underneath the White House. Okay. But when a president travels, Air Force One is the White House, is a mobile White House, is fully connected. When the Twin Towers were attacked, we did not know at that time, we know now, but we did not know if this was just the harbinger of a major attack on our country. Bush was popped in to Air Force One. No one ordered him, but he would he would probably have been forced into Air Force One regardless, because then he was elevated. It's the most secure place to be. It is EMT proof. It is escorted by fighter jets, and there are at any one time there are two Air Force Ones that travel, because again, they're saying, well, which one is just like the Beast, which is the White House limousine. Yeah, it's called the Beast by the security. They have more than one Beast. I think they have three. So you have a 1 in 3 chance that you're going to hit the right one, and they never let on which one the president is in. Okay, if the president were to go and travel, he's going to stay at military bases. So he's going to be within a protected environment, and he's also going to do it because you got to kiss up to the soldier as well. Okay. And the soldiers that when that happens, that base is going, there's a whole logistic train that goes wherever the president goes. Okay. Well, when the president travels through a city street, the Secret Service has already gone through all of that. Okay. All the manhole covers are bolted down. They can't be popped up. Everything is, they have snipers all along the routes. Okay. But they have that in Washington, D.C. And there they have the disadvantage that he's a sitting duck there. Okay. So there's no savings by having him in Washington, D.C. than out amongst the people. So he can do all, as he does now. When the president is overseas, he is still the president of the United States. It's not like he is not going to, he can, unlike Congress, the president can sign a bill anywhere he is. He doesn't have that limitation on him. So he is the president wherever he is, okay, regardless of that. And it costs just as much to keep him in Washington, D.C. as move him around. The nice thing about moving around is the people might have an actual chance to actually see the person that governs over them. The House of Representatives, which is now the state assemblies, the senators, which are now the governors, have a chance to have his ear for at least a year, or a chance to have his ear. You know that the president's going to make a speech before every state assembly. Okay. He's going to meet that when he lands, the governor's going to be there regardless of what party he's in. He's going to be there, shake the hand for a photo op. Hey, how are you? Yes, right here. Yeah, everyone smile. Okay. So there's no savings, and the president operates to this day. When he's over in another country, he's still president. He is totally informed. He is never out of the loop. That's what Air Force One's all about. He's never out of the loop. So there's no disruption of his job. He is wherever he is. Oh, that the president has to sleep in a different bed every week. Cry me a river. Okay, first of all, it's only 4 years of your life, maximum 8. You wanted a job. No one held a gun, except for practically George Washington. No one held a gun to your head, okay, to be president. You voluntarily became that. Everyone, there's no mysteries about the presidency. You knew what you walked into when you walked into it. And think about it from the president's standpoint. Once I kick him out of Washington, D.C., he's never going to say that he doesn't want to visit a state. Never. It'd be political suicide for him to say, just like it'd be political suicide for any governor to relocate and live in Washington, D.C. If you want to, there'd be an instantaneous recall vote drive and to kick him out of office if that governor tried to live in Washington, D.C. Any state assemblyman that tried to live in Washington, D.C., he'd have a recall vote against him or her. They have to be at home. So the president, politically, it is advantageous for him to be this because he's out seeing the people and it helps him that way. So I don't think there's going to be a lot of presidents that are going to be totally against this. It's just that I think it's best for the country. And for the next section, and then that leads into the next section.
The next section was the Capitol Hill building is no longer a functional building of the U.S. Congress. The White House is no longer the residence or office of the U.S. president, and both are made national monuments and turned over to the Smithsonian Institution for preservation, historical research, and public tours. The District of Columbia is stripped of its federal status and returned to the state of Maryland. So, yeah, I think this is kind of self-explanatory based on the last section. If the president is constantly traveling, there's no need for a White House. And if the governors are the Senate and the state assemblies are the House of Representatives, there's no need for a Capitol Hill building. So, yeah, it makes sense.
As far as the judicial branch, well, let's be honest about it. The Supreme Court justices don't give a rat's ass what you think. Okay? These are, no state's going to influence them. They'll just look at it and go, anyways, they won't care. So they already exist elsewhere. They might still continue in Washington, D.C. at the Supreme Court. That's fine. No one's going to bother them. But also, I'll tell you what, Annapolis is the state capital of Maryland. The state politicians are not going to relocate their capital to Washington, D.C. and have the stink of a D.C. on them. They're going to be, oh, no, we're fine where we're at. And as far as stripping, well, everything else has now been, the president's gone. The White House shut down, becomes a tourist destination. Capitol Hill is shut down, becomes a tourist destination. Supreme Court, they're off on their own. They don't give a shit. And they're not a tourist destination. You can go and see the Supreme Court. You will never see the Supreme Court in session. You have to be a constitutional lawyer to enter that room. Okay. So this is Washington, D.C. basically becomes a tourist destination for the state of Maryland. There's been a lot of talks, well, D.C. should be made the 51st state. Well, we don't need the federal district anymore. People don't understand that Washington, D.C. was one time a square. Okay, it's not, right now it looks like a square with a big bite taken out of it. And that's because of the Civil War, because it went into Virginia. When Virginia went with the Confederacy, well, they took that part. And when after the Civil War was over, they never returned it. Arlington Cemetery, but that's actually Robert E. Lee's home. That's his plantation. And why it became Arlington Cemetery was because there was a politician who basically wanted to spite Robert E. Lee. So he started burying their dead in his property. And that's why Arlington Cemetery is what it is Robert E. Lee's residence, just so that he would never be able to return to his residence because it's a graveyard. Yeah.
So just going to say, so the Supreme Court, they would still meet at,
possibly it's up to them.
Location.
The Supreme Court can actually, the Supreme Court has is a separate legislative thing. Now, their bill is paid for by Congress. Okay, well, basically, all budgets originate in the House of Representatives. Just like in the Senate, they get to approve or disapprove of Supreme Court justices. The House Representative gets to that's where the bills come out of. Now, yes, the Senate does create their own bill, and they have a meeting of the minds, et cetera, this type of stuff. But legally, that's where our bills come out, is the House Representatives, and I believe it has to pass them first before it is sent to the Senate, where then they approve or disapprove, and then the whole negotiation that goes on, and then it goes to the White House, and there's negotiations all the way. The president proposes a budget. Okay, but people don't understand. Congress doesn't give a shit. They can, yeah, you can propose whatever you want, fat boy. We don't care. Okay. Now, what happens is, and this is what shows you where the real power is. Okay. The president proposes a bill. It means nothing. It requires a member of the U.S. House of Representatives, who is always a member of their party. I introduced this the budget to the Senate. Then another member of the party, basically the speaker says, does anyone second this? Another member of their party says, I second this. And that's how the president's budget is introduced to Congress. It requires the U.S. House of Representatives to do that. And they have never not enforced that, because that's the House of Representatives basically saying, no, this is our power, not yours. They're very protective of their power.
All right. And then I'll say, so if we return DC to Maryland, does that mean the U.S. no longer has a capital at all?
No, doesn't need it.
Doesn't need a capital?
The stupidest thing for us to have is a national capital. Stupidest thing. Yeah.
I mean, every nation has a capital.
Yeah, they're stupid too. Okay. Because, let's say we're Russia. Okay. Do you know what the first target of Russia, the Soviet Union, was? Washington, D.C. Okay. That's why when the president gave his speech, the vice president or a member of the chain of command, a succession, was always somewhere else. And they were out of Washington, D.C., so that if the Washington, D.C. was nuked, there would be basically the federal government would continue with that person. And you'd be surprised who that person was at times. When Ronald Reagan was shot, okay, when the assassination attempt happened on him, there was confusion, etc. And Haig, which I think was the Secretary of Defense, or I think it was Secretary of Defense, or maybe Secretary of State. But for a moment in time, he was the acting president of the United States. Okay. So when you see the president give a speech, the chain of command has one person that would be in the chain of command out in case someone nuked the Capitol Hill building. Because think about it. It's insane that we had. You have the president give his annual address to Congress. You have both chambers of Congress in the same building. You have the Supreme Court in that building. Okay. Target number one. Okay. And the military, it goes up, I think, to at least I forget what decon, but it goes up at least one decon. Because if you're going to kill off our federal government, the president's speech is a perfect opportunity. And during the Cold War, it was always assumed that a Soviet submarine off our coast was going to launch a nuke. So that was only minutes away from Washington, D.C. and try to kill off everyone. I mean, that's why we have the internet, is because the internet was designed for the military, not civilians. The internet was so that you could not take out a central node and the military communications all collapse. The internet, you can't take out any node. It can always find a route to get to their destination. And eventually, basically, professors and graduate students abused it to the point where the military was like, when supposedly it was, I forget what the recipe was. I think it's pumpkin pie, but some recipe was set by some grad student, and the military was like, what? It was like, out. And so they kicked them out. And so that's why we have the internet now. We have today, is because, and the military still has its own internet. The military does not. The military, yes, Air Force, Army, Navy, Marines, Coast Guard, they all have their website, but that's not actually on the military's internet. Okay, so it's a portal for them to communicate and recruit. But the military still has its own internet, and God knows how many versions is up to now, probably hundreds of different versions. Is just like people don't understand that the military has EMP proof chips. Okay. So that if anyone did an EMP strike against them, the military would still operate. All of us would lose everything, and there's a whole thing about that, and we can go off on that, but that's away from this.
All right. Hey, I think I pretty much got the gist of it. And one thing too about that is, I think with DC, the reason why they wanted to be the 51st state was because one, they weren't able to vote for president,
Mm-hmm.
and there were some other issues they had. They basically had,
Mainly that is because it's a federal district. It was
yeah,
the Washington D.C. became what it is today. Not that was never their plan to have so many people there.
mm-hmm.
After the Civil War, slaves flooded Washington D.C. That's why it has a huge population it has. Was after the Civil War, they just flooded Washington D.C. The stage couldn't control it. Okay, there are many tales of free black men who would not cross the line into Maryland and would never go to Virginia. Okay, they once they entered it, there's some that never left it until literally the day they died, and they died in Washington D.C. So they had this huge population that kind of grew on it. All the government bureaucracy grew up on it. Again, you have to understand, with the founding fathers, they didn't mean to have the Washington D.C. to be all powerful, all everything, as massive as it is. But that's just how it grew up. Now that there's no president's gone, Congress is gone, the Supreme Court doesn't give a shit what anyone thinks. So what's the purpose of Washington D.C.? And that's another thing that's going to change. Okay, right now we have all of them there. The problem with Washington D.C., it is a lobbyist dream location. Okay, president, all senators, all House representatives in one location. You as a lobbyist can literally go down a hallway going from one U.S. senator or one U.S. House representative to the next, one after another after another. They are wined and dined in Washington, D.C. Back home, they're public servants, and the public lets them know they're public servants. Watch the town hall meetings that AOC has received, and they let her know exactly that they think that she's a public servant. You go and watch any town hall meetings by any of the senators and House representatives, no one kisses their ass back home. They want it. You answer this question. I'm upset with you. You hear me on out. Washington, D.C., the bureaucrats, the lobbyists kiss all the asses of every U.S. senator and U.S. House representative and the president. And that creates a problem. Just like Hollywood, there are some celebrities that start believing their own press releases. Okay. Well, in Washington, D.C., everyone praises me. Everyone thinks I'm wonderful. Everyone loves me, except I must be as brilliant as they think I am. I think I can decide everything for everyone in this nation. It just feeds their ego. You send them back home, their ego is checked at the door. Okay. So I make it for lobbyists. They go right now, there's 100 U.S. senators and 435 U.S. House Representatives, which means 535 federal politicians, add one for the president. With my amendment, there's 5,512 members of Congress spread all across the nation in every 50 state, literally every 50 state. Good luck being a lobbyist, okay? Pressing the flesh. Now, I've had other people say, well, they'll still send money. They can still buy them. Yeah. But there's a reason why U.S. House Representatives and U.S. Senators become lobbyists after they leave office, because they can get in and seen that U.S. Senator, that U.S. House Representative. They can press the flesh. Just like PR firms. There's a reason why they hire former reporters of the New York Times and the Washington Post and talent agents from, well, I don't know what she's doing now, but at one time Oprah's show and other talk shows, is because it gives that person that they hired then has an into talking to those people at that newspaper or that talk show, etc. That's why PR firms are built on those people. Same thing in Washington, D.C. I knew you as a U.S. House Representative. You knew me as a U.S. House Representative. I now retire. I now get paid multiple times what I made as a U.S. House Representative. I call you up, say, hey, Isaac, hey, Jack, how you doing? Hey, why don't I take you out to dinner? On me, which wink, wink means on the lobbying organization that he's now representing. I make it much more hard. Now they have to travel to all 50 states. I don't care how wealthy your organization is. Are you really going to be able to offer enough to 5,512 people to make them willing to sell their souls?
I see what you're saying.
Yeah. So it
All
breaks
right.
it. It kills DC lobbyists. He exists no more. The judicial court. You don't lobby the judicial court, okay? Unless you're a constitutional lawyer, you know.
Mhm.
So all that they're what can they do? Is they're not going to fly around and meet with 5,512, you know, and
People,
also
yeah.
yeah, and you know, maybe we should go on to the next section.
All right
Unless
then,
you got
yeah.
enough.
So yeah, the sixth and final one when I was the one I thought was the most interesting. Before I go into this, I'll say after hearing you explain all of these sections, they all make sense now. And
Thank you.
I see the reason for them and the benefit of them. Now, this last one is I'll be interested. You have to explain this to me because
Sure.
it goes like this: any country can become a U.S. territory if 2/3 of an open and free nationwide referendum vote to do so. After at least 5 years as a U.S. territory, a U.S. territory can become a U.S. state if at least 2/3 of its population can read, write, and converse in American English to an eighth grade level. And then at least 2/3 vote in favor of an open and free territory wide referendum. Any U.S. state or territory can secede from the USA by a simple majority vote in an open and free state territory wide referendum. So basically, you're saying any country can become a territory and then a state if they vote to do so. My question
Yeah.
is, I feel like that would be a massive headache. For example, here's one I thought of, right? Right now in the Middle East, there's this ongoing conflict between Israel and Palestine, right? Israel is our ally. What if Palestine votes? Well, yeah, what if a country like, say, Palestine, let's say another country like just any third world country that, say, like Haiti, they vote to become a U.S. state or U.S. territory. All right. They have a lot of debt and they could become a burden to our country. I mean, if I was a member of a third world country, and the reason why they have this debt, it's not necessarily their fault. There are a whole lot of reasons for this. But if I was a member of a third world country, why wouldn't you vote to join one of the most populous countries in the world? What do you have to offer that country, and why wouldn't they just become a burden to the
Um,
country?
do you want me to answer now?
Yeah, yeah, go ahead.
Okay.
Yeah.
A few things you should understand.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, the American economy is the largest economy in the world.
Mm-hmm.
Nothing comes close. Nothing. Okay. China is trying to come close. Japan once was, they said, oh, it's going to take over. They didn't. Okay. We are a massive, massive economy. Okay. We measure our economy in trillions of dollars. Okay. There are very few countries that measure their economy in trillions. So, but also you have to understand, I'm not making it easy for them to join the United States of America. I'm not asking for them to join. I'm not asking them to pass by a simple majority or a super majority, which is called 60%, which is what some bills have to pass or did have to pass one time in the Senate. Okay. It's a 2/3 majority. I'm purposely doing it that way to prevent a civil war from happening within that country. Okay. For those that don't want to join, those that do. Okay. 50% would almost guarantee a civil war. 2/3, yeah, that a lot less. I'm not going up to 75%. That would be, I might as well then say unanimous. Okay. So it's very hard to become just a U.S. territory. Then they have 5 years operating under our form of government. We are not going to adjust to them. They're going to adjust to us. No territory determines how the U.S. federal government is going to be. Okay. You are adjusting to our laws, our legislation, etc. So then after that 5 years, you have to have a citizenry that can converse in the language of the country that they're joining. In our case, it just so happens to be English. If it could have been Spanish at one time in our country, but it's English. I believe this is necessary, so that I believe that assimilation is absolutely crucial. It doesn't have to be the first generation. First generations normally don't assimilate. They try to, but normally they don't. But you have to, that would show that they really, I put that in as them then saying, yeah, we are really serious about joining your country. We have now taught now there are some countries that English is already their primary language. Okay. But then again, I have, after you even achieve that, I can come and say another referendum to become a state. You have to again have 2/3 majority. And then I come back with the other one is about the states, but it was also basically about territories. Okay, you're a U.S. territory. You don't like it. You joined us. Boy, this is not what we bargained for. This is not. I don't like how this country runs. Well, you only need a simple majority to leave us. Okay, I'm in this country is a phrase, love it or leave it. Okay, and I think that should apply to the states. If a state does not like being part of the United States, okay, leave. Okay, do I think it's going to happen? No. The one that's most likely to happen is New Hampshire, because there's a whole bunch of libertarians that are trying to get people enough to go there and succeed from the United States. Truth of the matter is, New Hampshire leaves the United States, and we won't even know that they're gone. Okay, yeah. And they're going to be kissing our ass because we don't need them; they need us. We can just go, okay, all the borders to your country are now. Good luck with Canada. We'll just shut them on down. Okay. So, I mean, but also, again, there's a route to leave if you want to leave. It's mainly for U.S. countries that join as a territory who regret buyer's remorse and they want to leave. Here's a simple way for you to leave. Because otherwise, if a 50%, if I had 2/3 that they had to leave, well, once they have a simple majority, that's civil war at that time. So I'm preventing a civil war, basically within that. Basically a civil war within that territory from happening by requiring a much higher bar to join us twice. Okay, in addition to another one, they have to know the language, but also a lower bar for to leave. So you didn't like it, there you go. Now, as far as poor country joining us, again, we're the world's largest economy. Okay, those countries are poor by and large because of corrupt politicians. Not that we don't have corrupt politicians ourselves. Okay, we have our share, but our system of government comes into effect there. Capitalism comes into effect there. There are no trade. We don't have trade barriers between the states. There will not be a trade barrier between this state and that new state. There won't be a trade barrier between our state and a territory. There are no trade barriers between our U.S. territories. Okay, so could the poorest nations join? Yes, I hope they do. Okay, we're a capitalist country. I think that opens on up. Just think of the businesses. Think of McDonald's. Well, McDonald's is probably already there, but other businesses will enter a country if they became a state of one of our states or just U.S. territory with a potential for being a state. Now all the barriers are done. The businesses know the laws that they're operating because they're already operating in the United States. They'll just flood that country. Their economies will just soar. I mean, I personally predict that I hope the poorest, worst country in the world joins us. And then we turn it around. And the other countries go, holy shit. And our country will prosper. Okay. By turning that country around, our country will prosper. The world will prosper by turning that country around. And their citizens will prosper. And our citizens will prosper. Capitalism rises all boats. Okay. So I don't think there's a problem. Someone once said, well, what if Ukraine were to have a vote and vote to join the United States? Well, I tell you what, the war in Ukraine would end in that moment. Russia would never, and then we just turn back and say, yeah, just get the fuck out of those territories, those provinces, out. And Russia would, okay, boss. I mean, they wouldn't have an option. Okay, the Soviet Union is the Soviet Union was a sham. Okay, It was never a superpower. It was a country that convinced the world that they were a superpower. I mean, they literally had missiles that were running off of computer chips that they took out of computer games that they bought en masse from us. That's how much of a joke they are. All of our missiles, computer chips, are EMP proof. None of theirs are. Okay, so I mean, if Ukraine were to join, the war would be over. Period. Well, is Russia going to now attack the United States? They don't. With what? Okay. There's nuclear missiles. They don't. Yes, they have them. They're completely meaningless. Okay.
So let's say a state like California or Texas votes to leave America. They have monumental, they're pretty big economies, and they have a lot of people there. So if they vote to leave, wouldn't that affect our economy as well?
It would. But the reality is they won't. I mean, there are some loudmouths in both of those countries. I don't want to succeed. There are tiny minority. There have been polls. Oh, would you like to succeed? Yeah. Oh, yeah, I like to succeed. But when you actually go back to them and see the polls where you lay out the consequences of succeeding from the country, the approval goes down to zero. Statistically zero. Yes, there are some that still say yes, but we're like, oh yeah, okay, California, yeah, okay. You want any of our water? Without our water, your crops die. Okay. Oh, you want to transport your goods in our country? Okay, we're going to have tariffs for anything that comes out of your country into ours, and some of those products we just don't want to have. Now we're just going to say, nah, we don't need any of your oranges. We have Florida. We're good. We're solid on oranges. Okay. And you don't think America's going to be vindictive with them? Oh yeah, it's going to be vindictive with them. So their economies will crash. Texas crash. California crash. Oh, Hollywood, you want to be, oh, well, you see, I'm sorry, but we might just bring about saying that we will only allow 10 films a year to come from California. A lot of countries do that, by the way.
Yeah.
Okay. And would America be vindictive? If you don't know America, America can be vindictive. No, whenever they do the superficial poll, would you like to succeed from the country? Yeah, they're upset because, the president, not the president they want to be. It's just like the bullshit of all these celebrities. I'm going to leave the United States if Trump becomes president. Yep, and do they? None do. Okay? All bluster. All bluster. All hot air. Because when it comes to it, there are a lot of young people that hate America. And the thing I tell them is, see the world. There are blacks who hate America. I say, go over to China. Just go over and visit China for a weekend. You'll be coming back, holy shit, that place is racist. Okay? They have signs that says no blacks allowed. And by the way, it's completely legal. Okay? I mean, so many of the people that are anti-America have never been outside of America. So many people that want communists have never been in a communist country. Okay. My best friend in college was from Pakistan, raised in Saudi Arabia. He absolutely loathed these kids that were handing out communist leaflets, etc. He comes, have you been in a communist country? Oh, no, I have. Have you, and then he just tells them what it's like to be in an actual communist country. And, oh, you're just lying. You're telling the guy that has actually been to a communist country, you've never been to a country, you're calling him the liar? Okay, go and see the country. I honestly believe one of the best things in America, if we want to get rid of all these anti-American youngsters, I say we'll have them just go and give them a tour of the world, then have them come back, and they'll be like, holy shit, we got it good here. Yeah, we have it good here. Okay, we fought for everything we have here. Nothing came easy here. British didn't say, oh, you don't want to be with us? Okay, well, fine, we'll leave you alone. Good luck. The British wanted to help the southern states during the Civil War. Okay, they really did. They hated us. It wasn't until much later that America and Britain loved each other. They hated us. The reason why they couldn't was, well, they'd already abolished slavery in the United Kingdom. So they couldn't support the South and still, because, well, it was all about slavery. And so that's why they didn't. France didn't, because they were not the superpower they once were when they were helping out the Revolutionary War. This is Napoleon's era, and not even the original Napoleon. And they just weren't. And we threatened war with them. If you side with the South, we'll attack you. So, anyways, I don't. Theoretically, could there be states that would leave? Yes. Good luck with them. I don't think there will be, because it takes a majority of people to say, yeah, I want to leave the United States. And I just don't see that happening, even in California, even in New Hampshire. But it's still there. Another thing that happens with the last section is, in our country's history, we've had dirty politics on what territories become a state. Utah is a perfect example of this. In our Constitution and Bill of Rights, we have freedom of religion. Okay, kind of important. Okay, we didn't care. We told Utah, you can't be a state. It was Utah territory. You can't be a territory until you outlaw polygamy, which is a core tenet of their religion. They eventually wanted to be a state, so they outlawed polygamy. They went against their own religion, and we took them in. California is as high as it is because they had gold. And they said, you take us as is. We wanted to break, I think, up to 4 different states. California, we wanted to break them. They said, no. All or nothing. All or nothing. And we'll take this part of the Rocky Mountains. they said, here it is, just like Texas, all or nothing. No, you take all of Texas or you take none of Texas. And there are other deals that we're going through. You read about after the Revolutionary War, how the states were created, and how some people, they want to just draw a straight line from the state borders right across. I mean, the Virginia would have just been this gigantic band all across the country. And again, Congress going, oh, no, we're not doing that shit. So we started breaking on up. I think at one time you only need 20,000 residents in a territory to petition and become a state. So I just take out the dirty politics, the ambiguity, but also making it really hard to become a state. I mean, you look at that. You ask any politician about getting that to get elected, they would just no. So I'm making it very hard to them to join, but I'm also offering out every country that does join, and I believe that will.
I'll tell you what. Let me. I just have a couple more questions,
Sure.
And then we can go ahead and wrap it up. Do you think it's important for our country to expand and start becoming bigger? Is that one reason why you have that in there? Do you think that's
not really?
Yeah.
I have it in there to provide non-dirty politics ways for our countries to join our nation. Is upfront, is not hidden, is not misunderstood. Here it is. I think there's a benefit for the United States becoming larger. I think the larger the United States becomes, the less and less world war would happen. It just becomes impossible to take us out. We are an isolationist country, except for our federal politicians who want to have influence around everywhere. So they say, look what I did. Look what I did. I helped out those people in that poor country. I sent them money. I sent your money. And you better itemize that $600 donation and the gift you got. So, I mean, it's just, anyways.
I got you. So basically everything we talked about, I mean, this is pretty much kind of a radical restructuring of our government. When I say radical, I don't mean in a bad way. I mean, just dramatically. My question is, what are the chances of this actually happening? Do you think is this something that could happen?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah?
Oh, yeah.
Why do you think
I'll tell you why. Because I do not play to the good nature of politicians. Not at all. I don't believe politicians, by and large, are good. There are some exceptions: Ron Paul, Rand Paul, Tom Massey. I play to the bad nature. Politicians want power. That's how we got in this mess in the first place. The federal politicians wanted power. Okay, what my amendment turns to the state saying, hey, would you like more power? Governor, would you like to have 2 votes in the U.S. House or U.S. Senate? Hey, U.S. State Assembly members, would you like not to be on the sidelines when there's something happens nationally or internationally? Would you like power? I'll give you power in the U.S. House of Representatives. But I also turn around, U.S. senators. Okay, right now they're 1 of 100. The only thing they have to do is take out the governor. They not only have double their power in the U.S. Senate, they have the power of the governorship. It's all about power grab. And look at them. Do they think they can take out the governor? Darn right they can take out the governor. First of all, you can't be a politician without an insanely large ego. Okay, for the slings and arrows that would be thrown at you, you have to be bulletproof. Your ego has to be bulletproof. They already won a statewide election. That's how they became U.S. senators, same as the governor. Okay, well, I go in that. In fact, probably the U.S. senator is probably more well known within their state than the governor is. Okay, so they already know they can win a state election. There you go. I can take it. Look at the House of Representatives. Right now, there are 6 states with only 1 U.S. House of Representative. Well, that means that person had to win a statewide election to become that U.S. House of Representative. Does he or she think he can take out the governor and become governor? Darn right they can. Again, massive egos. There are 7 states with 2 U.S. House of Representatives. Well, you've already won half the state. How hard will it be winning the other half of the state? You've already won half of it. Okay. Then there are 2 states that have 3 U.S. House of Representatives. Well, you've already won a third of the state. Pretty good odds. Go to Las Vegas. They consider fantastic odds. And I'll go one more. There are 6 states with 4 U.S. House of Representatives. You want a quarter of the state, winning the whole state? Good odds. Well, right there, that you add them on up, that's 21 states that would be in favor of this because they want more power, the politicians. Out of the House of Representatives, means 50 House of Representatives. That's more than 11% of all members of the U.S. House of Representatives. But here's the other thing, too, is there's a thing called a constitutional convention. Okay, this is part of our Constitution. Just like the amendment process is part of our Constitution, so is a Constitutional Convention, which enables the states to call it. They do not need the permission of the President or Congress to call constitutional conventions done by the states. That is the threat that many states have used against Congress time and time again to get them to pass legislation that the states want. Well, we'll call a constitutional convention. Boy, you better hope that's the only thing we change, because the biggest threat for always been with the constitutional convention to get the Congress to go along with what the states want to go is, oh yeah, we'll pass term limits if we have a constitutional convention. Think about that, fat boy. And that's okay. Yeah, we'll let you do that. That's the threat that the states have always used against Congress, because, oh yeah, we'll pass it and we'll pass term limits, because a lot of states already have term limits. So you have a situation where the states can call for a constitutional convention. You have the U.S. senators. Well, they don't give a shit. They want more power. They think they can take out the governor. It's just one guy, and they probably think, well, he's a jerk anyways. That fat boy, his time has come. And that's not even talking about the states that have term limits on their governors. That governor might not be able to even run again. Okay, so now you have 2 U.S. senators. And look at what I've done in America. Unless you are someone special, super special, the route to the presidency is one of 2 ways, either through the U.S. Senate or the governorship. Are there exceptions? Yes, Trump is an exception. But how many multi-billion-dollar worldwide celebrities are there? Not that many. Eisenhower, Grant, George Washington became president because they were the commander-in-chief for their wars that they had gone through. Okay, Colin Powell was the people were trying to get him to run after the first Iraq War, Part 1. Okay, and he might have won. He didn't want it. Okay, but he actually became part of the Bush's White House afterwards. So the only route is to get to there is governorship or U.S. House of Representatives. Well, I just did something really nice to them. I eliminate 2/3 of their competition, because now there's only 50 of them. Because the governor is also the House of Representative. Again, they want power. They all want to be in the White House. They all think they can be in the White House. They all think they're qualified. Every governor thinks he would be a great U.S. president. I've never heard of a governor that says, "Nah, it would not be great," because it would also be political suicide for them to say that. Because, well, then why do you think you would be a governor? Isn't that also being a chief executive? So for them, it's all I play to their bad natures, power grab. The states want power. I offer them power. Here's power. I take out one of the chambers of the Senate because I offer the Senate power. With even in the House of Representatives, well, some of the members, they're going to be running for their governorship themselves. Okay, so 10%, 11% of them are already like, hey, I'm already, hi, would you like to run my donation for governorship? Okay, so then you have 98, 89% might not be, but then you have the threat of the of a constitutional convention, and they don't have the support of the U.S. Senate, so they'll fold. And again, the states can just go, yeah, we like this. Oh, we'll have a constitutional convention, and we don't care what Congress says or the president says. We can do that. And Congress is not going to give them any lip because, oh, yeah, really? Oh, we're putting in term limits. Oh, and also, we're also putting in right now that all current members of Congress can no longer run for re-election, and they could. Okay, they get to write over. So, do I think it has a chance? Oh, yeah. The only thing I need to get is up to a level to where people hear this. The politicians they'll hear the sirens call of more power. They'll never stand between a politician and more power. And so only thing I have to do, I believe, is get up to a level. The states is a power grab by them. No, this will happen. Only thing I have to get is up to a certain level. Right now, I am appearing on podcasts like yours. I'm cutting my teeth on you guys. The questions you ask, etc. And all so far, there have been new ones every time. You have had yours. And by the way, you are the one that has have read the amendment the best of all the podcasts I have been on so far. Everyone tries to abbreviate it. And when they abbreviate it, I have to, no, that's not what the sentence says. But you did a perfect job on that. And I'm very happy you're the first one. I've already done 10 podcasts. You were the first one that did a good job of that. And I have right now, I have another 10 that's already scheduled into the new year. I'm talking with many more podcasts about scheduling the time. And again, they're all like after New Year. Once I basically have done all the podcasts I can do, I'll then pitch radio and TV talk shows, and also YouTube channels that have big followings. There's one YouTube channel that contacted me very early, and they wanted to have me on. But I always hate when they say but I have to have 1 million followers on X, on Twitter, before they'll have me on. They are multiple times bigger, and I understand. They want me to bring something to the table besides just an idea. But like with this right now, I have billions and billions of followers right now. If you count under 1,000 of billing, but
I'm about to say.
But when you send me a link to this episode, I'll tweet that on out. I've already seen episodes. I've done this already twice. I didn't do it every single time I've been on podcasts because some don't want that. Weird. Some didn't even want to send me a link to their episode, and I didn't see why not. But anyways, if you want me, I'll tweet out to my followers as they grow. I'm seeing that when I do that, people go back into my posts. My X account is devoted to this cause. If you read all my posts, they're almost 99% are all about this cause. You read my profile is about this cause, and that's why I started on up. So this is all. If anyone wants to help or at least follow the progress, right now the only thing they can do is follow me on X, on Twitter. That's it. I just need followers. Once I get to a certain level, I'll be able to. Once I start appearing on Tucker Carlson, on the Quartering, Crowder, and then on TV and radio talk shows, the press will start to then pay me attention, and then it will just build. I'm hoping, because it's an election year, that one of the presidential candidates or Biden endorses this. And if they would, I mean, obviously, if Trump did, it exploded overnight, and they only have to say semi-nice things about it. And I'm not opposed to Biden endorsing it. This has to be bipartisan. It just has to be. There's just no way around it. And this is not a Republican bill. This is not a Democrat bill. The Democrats are going to benefit from this as much as the Republicans are going to benefit from this. There are Democrat states, there are Republican states. This bill does nothing to affect those things. You know, this is just getting rid of the duplication of government agencies at the federal level that are already done at the state level. That's mainly this. This gets rid of DC, gets rid of the lobbyists, gets the president out amongst the people. This gets the vague terms of how do I become a U.S. territory? How do I become a state? Nope, this puts it in here. Here are the steps. It makes it hard, purposely hard. But it's just, that's what this amendment is about. And I fully want, if Biden came out and said, hey, I'm in favor of this, I would love it. I'd be very thankful for it. If Trump did, same deal. If you pronounce it,
Ramaswamy.
Yeah, yes, that one.
Yeah.
oh my God, I gotta learn how to say it. And his first name, how do you pronounce it?
Vivek.
Vivek.
Yeah, I could be pronouncing it wrong, but I just say Ramaswamy.
Okay, yeah. And then there's Ron DeSantis. In fact, Ron DeSantis, I would think, would actually probably have the most might be the one that would most say, because he is a currently sitting governor. So he can actually say, yeah, I see where this would be a good thing. But any of them, the whole issue here is gaining a national attention. And once that, I believe the greed of politicians will take it from there. You know, and I have no political aspirations beyond this. If a country were to join us, even as just a territory, and they never became a state, I'd love to be there at the signing of that. I'd love to be present to that. I'd love to be the signing of this. And I don't know if this would be handled the same way as bills are in Congress, but I'd love to be there where this is signed into law. You know, but I'm not looking at running for office. You know, this is enough. This will radically change our country. I think my legacy is pretty much solid if this becomes part of our Constitution. I don't think I have to do any more. You know, so that's, I think it has a shot. It just has to get public exposure.
All right, then. Well, hey, I hope you get as much public exposure as you can. And this has been interesting. You definitely opened up my eyes and given me more to think about. And hopefully we get this out there. I could definitely see this being a great boon to the American people. Before I go, can you just let people know where to find you?
It's simply at Twitter at this stage. X, as it's called, is the @ symbol Jack, JACKT, Decker, DECKER. This jacket is @ symbol Jack T. Decker. And that's the only place right now. I'm just focusing on that. I hate these guests that are going, and you can find me on Instagram and Facebook. And, I'm a marketer. I've been a marketer for 30 years. One thing. I'm just asking you to do one thing, and that's it. If you're not on Twitter, then that would suck. I'd ask you to join Twitter to follow me. You don't have to be in favorite. Just follow me. There's a lot of people, I'm sure, that follow my Twitter account that just want to see how this turns out. I'll give updates. If you post, I've been getting a lot of, because now I'm up to 800. And so I've been getting a lot of DMs. I would appreciate if people were to reply to the public tweets I make and not send me DMs. It's getting to the point where I'm going to have to stop replying to DMs because I'm just getting so many. And when I'm now replying to them, it's really short replies. I'm sure some of them are upset that I don't give long ones. I give long ones. If you reply to a tweet, I try to do that. Right now, I'm trying to build up exposure on Twitter. So I'm posting to other things, commenting on other things to gain exposure. But eventually I plan to I'm hoping that this gets to a stage where the only thing I do on Twitter is reply to tweets about the amendment. And that's the best way that people, if they want to communicate with me, reply to tweets on Twitter, and I try to do a good job. I there may come a time when I can't reply to all tweets. I'm not there yet. It's coming close now to where I can't reply to DMs anymore. And it's been growing very, very quickly. At least I feel it has. So,
all right then. Well, hey, this has
and I
been a
appreciate
great
being
show.
on here again. You've been one of the better hosts. I have now 11. You're the 11th. Again, you're the one that read the amendment without paraphrasing and getting parts wrong. I appreciate that you saying the questions beforehand so I could read over to see what you were thinking. And I have over since you did that, I've been thinking about how I want to reply to those. So I'm very happy to be on. If you ever want me back, you ever have if you have a no-show list, you put me on your no-show list. I'd love to come back, and feel free to contact me later. Anyone that I'm just having a policy that the first 100 podcasters that I appear on, no matter how big I get, I don't care if I'm an international celebrity, I'm willing to come back on your show, and we don't have to talk about this either. We can bullshit about other stuff.
Right.
But if you want me to have on,
hey,
so
I appreciate it.
It's a way of saying thanks to you for having me on so early.
Hey, no problem, man. This has been a great show. I appreciate it. One thing too, if you could just email me a picture of yourself, because when I post the audio on YouTube, I like to put a picture of the person I'm talking to.
Will do.
So just send me a picture of yourself via email, and I'll probably get this up sometime in January. All right.
Okay. All right. Yep. I was surprised at how many. Some posted right away. Others, I'm like, there's one that my episode will appear in June.
Oh wow.
Yeah, he does like 10. He does like 10 a day, and he does them in batches. So 10, 10, 10, 10, 10, 10. And he's a weekly podcast. So just out into infinity. So sometime in June. So yeah, it is wild. So,
all right, Dan. Well, hey, Happy New Year, man. And
Happy New Year to you, dude. Thanks for having me on, Zite.
Hey, no problem. Take it easy. All right, that's a wrap. Thank you for joining us for another enlightening conversation here on Bright Brains. I hope you've gained valuable insights and inspiration to fuel your own bright ideas. If you enjoyed today's episode, don't forget to like and subscribe, rate, and leave a review on your favorite podcast platform or however else you listen to this podcast. Also, we can be found on all major social media. Just type in Bright Brains with a Z. And remember, the brightest minds are those that never stop seeking knowledge.